Hey everyone. This week's reflection is the salt of the earth, and it was really triggered by walking through a company and learning more about the people throughout the process. And as a person of almost 30 years, veteran in the company, looked at me, he said, before he said anything else about the process and the great knowledge and perspective he had earned over those 28 years, he said to me, college wasn't for me. And it was that humility that really struck me. And then he talked about the great insight he had with the process and helping those people along the way of his 28 years, and as he continues to do today, to help them relate to the process and help them relate to their customers and the outcome. And as we moved back into the executive office and talked about what this meant in terms of company value, because that was the ultimate theme this week, was how do we drive company value and help people relate to it, so they don't just feel like they're just doing a job in isolation, or as this very humble person said, college wasn't for me, like that even matters. His perspective was so strong, college doesn't matter unless it's for his own personal benefit or edification. What he shared was more than people learn in college for many years. And it was really important because what he talked about was helping his colleagues over the years and even today to relate their performance ultimately to the company, customers, as well as each other, and how they can make those small wins and improvements that they do celebrate, which is another great thing to do, celebrate those small wins. But getting back to driving the company value and the salt of the earth, the expression the salt of the earth, if you're not familiar with it, I wasn't. As I was a kid, I heard many people in my family as adults use it, and I thought it was just being a good person. But if you dig deeper in it, it's that preservation quality, preserving food, salt, and then it's also adding flavor to salt. If you've ever watched one of those reality shows, you need more salt to add flavor. And then the final part is that value and what it means to serve as he was doing, and serving his company and serving his colleagues. And really, when I came back and reflected with it in terms of the owner conversation after that tour, it was thinking of the business like that prepared meal with the ingredients and that extra flavor. And many times we only focus on those revenue measures, whether it's sales or profits or EBITDA. If you're getting into that conversation about a potential sale and the real business valuation, those are pretty common terms. If you look back at what it takes to drive those values and make that EBITDA really strong, though, it goes back to that guy on the floor and how he understands how he relates to each other and how they relate to your ultimate customer and the outcomes that you achieve every day. Because those are the people that not only carry the culture, but they carry the driving forces of those values. And many times, because they're focused too much on the humility, they don't realize, because they don't understand those three characteristics of that preservation of your company culture and your company value, and adding the flavor in terms of the meaning of working together in the context of all the work, rather than just focusing on how I do my job. It's how I serve the ultimate customer, and many people don't relate to that. As a matter of fact, in the first family company I worked with, people were almost too polite and afraid to ask each other questions to ultimately serve the customer. So they would struggle for a couple of hours trying to solve a question or a challenge on their own that they could have solved with the help of a fellow colleague within a couple of minutes. And it was literally building those little bridges and recognizing how they're all valuable to each other and ultimately valuable to their client. So what was the takeaway? Well, the takeaway I just want to share with you, and maybe it's someone who is acting too humble, as the person said, college wasn't for me, I'm not as smart as you other people. But he really is. He really is smart, and he has great insight that he's earned. He's earned by doing, by learning, by observing with humility and learning fast. And the insight that he shared was an example of just how fast he's learned and how much he's brought it to share with other people, and that creating value as the salt of the earth person he is. And so guiding the team with reminding them that they're not just ingredients, they're not just doing a job like a job description, but really reminding them that they are the flavor, like that salt, that added flavor to the legacy of the company and ultimately those customers you serve. Make sure that the top 10 client list is not just a list that you sell, but it's a list that people can relate to throughout the company and relate every day in the work they do, so they can then better relate to each other and recognize how their work is more like a prepared meal as opposed to this individual job to be done. And it doesn't really matter that much, and college wasn't for me. The truth is, growing that family company legacy is exactly the job that he had done and he continues to do today. And it was really recognizing how we can go back and maybe spread that message to some people who are being a little bit too humble about what they've learned, and maybe helping them relate better to each other in their process and how their jobs relate to each other, not just for the sake of the jobs and getting paid and their own revenue, if you will, for their salary, but ultimately how they serve the customer. And maybe you even recognize the next iteration of innovation for your customers and serve them better too. So be the salt of the earth and go forth and share that message in creating value to help people recognize how they too are the salt of the earth. Talk to you again next week. Thanks.